Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
I'm Neil Munro.
So today we're talking about a recent fine for a hotel with regards to asbestos management and what they didn't do. And I mean, the story, it was on the BBC, and long and short of it, there was a hotel had a survey completed and asbestos was discovered in a poor condition in November of 2017, but they didn't actually do anything about it until spring 2018. So we're only talking a 4-month period, but there were unsealed asbestos in kind of back of house areas, lift shaft, former kitchen area and a basement corridor. But over the course of this 4 months, they didn't do anything with it. And because of that, they were hit with £24,000 fine and also told to pay £6,000 in court costs. However, what they did say was that the company would have been hit with a 6-figure sum if it wasn't for the fact that we're in COVID times, because the company had made 15 million quid plus profit previously. So therefore, they would have been hit with a much, much larger fine if it was normal times. And for me, that's
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that they hadn't spent any money either, because they'd spent money on other things.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically the prosecuting parties kind of got on board with it was unacceptable delays and putting those works out and putting them back, which for us in the industry, this is not a rare case.
No, it's not.
It's a rare case to come to trial and actually be prosecuted.
Although I think the tide is turning on that, because we know HC are looking at developing their prosecutions department further and are looking at getting more officers out into the field for cases like this.
100%. Particularly in these current times, the HC have spent a fortune on reacting to the COVID crisis. And they've spent a fortune on inspecting premises which they wouldn't usually go to.
Yeah.
They've focused on that in the right way to obviously make sure that places are COVID secure. And wherever the government has made a deficit in a department, they need to recoup that money.
Yeah, exactly. And they will do with the fee for intervention, which essentially is what is going to pay for all of this. And that's the big takeaway for me from this, is the fact that they'd already started making moves on doing this. They're actually making moves. They are actively finding people. And if you think about it, asbestos was found and not dealt with for 4 months.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, in the grand scheme of things, that's a short time frame. And like you said, I think it's not uncommon. I mean, we know of projects that people need to deal with their asbestos and they don't do it for 6 months, 12 months, which is ridiculous. And that's if HC visited them off the back of these guys being visited and only a 4-month period, well, wow, I dread to think what the fine would be and what the consequences would be for that.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make people sit up a little bit.
Yeah, and it should do. It really should, because that's the whole purpose of the regulations, to stop people being exposed to asbestos. If you've got asbestos that's been identified...
Well, this is the worst case, isn't it? This is like when you know you've got an issue and you just sat on it.
Yeah.
Really, I think the HC have been really lenient on this case.
Really lenient.
Reading between the lines, and this is only reading between the lines, it sounds like they had, some real bad asbestos in... exposing their employees, basically, in the back of house areas, not dealt with. And in a type of property like that, you have got lots of people walking around, running around in these premises, coming across this asbestos. And to sit on it for that period of time, God only knows what exposures these people had. to be hit with that kind of mediocre fine, I think they've got off really lightly, especially when, quoting the profit that they made.
Like you said,
15.5 million.
I think it is due to the COVID pandemic of not kicking somebody when they're down as such.
Yeah.
But I think this really should be a warning for anybody who's had asbestos identified that needs dealing with. It does need dealing with, and it needs dealing with in a very short time frame. Because if not, then the HSE they will find out. And I mean, this case
post-COVID, it's going to be a different story.
Yeah, and that's it. And this case was brought about by an ex-employee of that property as well. Again, reading between the lines, it looks like whether they left disgruntled or not, who knows? But the long and short of it was they had reported it and the HC acted on it. So again, all these things come into play, and the fact that HC are actively looking to undertake more prosecutions. They're actively looking to get more people out in the field. They're actually doing this kind of work and prosecuting. They are listening to ex-employees, whether disgruntled or not. They're actually listening to people like that and coming and doing visits off the back of it.
Yeah.
And if you add all of that in one big pot, well, 2021 and beyond is going to be a hell of a lot more headaches for business owners that are just ignoring their asbestos.
Yeah. Now, what we don't know is, could there or was there a solution that could have prevented them being prosecuted? They had asbestos identified and they'd looked at works that possibly would need to have been done to rectify it. However, if they'd had a consultant on board that could maybe give them some different advice to what's the temporary fix for this? What systems, what procedures can we put in place? Is there an alternative that, would save us spending this money immediately to get it fixed? Was there another solution that was possible to prevent people being exposed to it?
Exactly. I mean, they could have looked at doing an air monitoring regime to understand the fibre levels within those areas. They could have looked at locking those areas off.
Isolating them off.
Yeah, exactly, because that's it. There's always workarounds.
Managing the actual situation as opposed to, going for the immediate removal option. There's always a solution. And that's kind of what the HC will be looking for. It's, you haven't done anything about it whatsoever. You've not prevented people being exposed to asbestos here. It doesn't always mean that you have to spend the money on getting it removed. It's at the end of the day, it's just preventing exposure. That's the key thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, it's just the time frame, as short as it was between them discovering it and actually doing something about it. For some people to say, well, it's 4 months. That's a short time frame. It's like, yeah, that is a short time frame. However, like you just said, if they've done nothing else, well, people are still being or potentially being exposed day in, day out. Yeah. And when you think about it, it's like, when you think about it from the moral standpoint of knowing you've got asbestos that could potentially be harming people, staff, your guests, staff's family members, all these things going on. That's one thing to kind of bear in mind. But also additionally, if you look at it from the other side, the commercial aspect side of it, if you put your hotel manager hat on of you're coming out of a pandemic, you're going to be trying to get people into your hotel to come and visit the area and use your hotel for business conferences and other facilities and things like that. And now you've got this in the press. Your name's in the press.
Yeah.
And for me, if I'd read that and I'd had a booking somewhere, I'd cancel it, because if they're not getting that right, and they're not doing that right, what else has gone wrong at that place?
Well, you're absolutely right. We're talking about the money cost from this one prosecution. What's the real cost?
Yeah.
What's the real cost of that publicity on your business?
Exactly. It's not just the 30 grand in court costs and fines that they're paying. It's that long-term thing.
Who's going to want to work there?
Yeah.
Who's going to want to stay there? Who's going to want to visit? And like you said, conferences, etc.
There's a lot of things that get pulled for different reasons. I mean, Trump leaving his presidency recently in the manner that he did, and the riots that went on and everything like that. Talk about bad PR. I mean, that's massively affected the Trump brand and the Trump wealth as a portfolio, because left and right. I mean, all the PGAs were cancelled and moved from his golf courses. People were cancelling conferences. And this is the same thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's that asbestos bomb has gone off, and now it's in the news, and people hear about it, and it just puts people off, and rightly so, because if you're not looking after your people, who you employ, your customers, then rightly so, people will march with their money, and they should do, because why would you want to be associated or go to... Imagine being a newlywed or a couple that are planning their wedding, and they're going to have their wedding at a hotel, and it comes out in the press that there's asbestos there. I mean, imagine if you were a couple that had your wedding there, and all your family members and friends and all the rest of it went there, and then you've got this big shadow of a doubt that's now cast over everyone, going, well, we went to Neil's wedding, and how do I know I've not been exposed?
Yeah.
Because again, it's all in the press, it gets out there, and it just creates that worry for everybody, and it's all unnecessary, because if they'd have dealt with it in the correct manner, and as soon as it was identified, looked at how they can, like you said, manage it effectively and appropriately, what can happen, they wouldn't be in this scenario now.
No, definitely not. It's to know and not to do is far worse than not to know at all, I think. It's because you've been... This problem's been highlighted to you. You're staring the cold facts in the face and saying, shall we?
Yeah.
Or should we just ignore it
Yeah.
and pretend and hope it goes away?
And that's it. And it's not going away. And that's kind of the message of this podcast, really. I guarantee there's going to be more of these incidents time and again coming into the press a lot over the coming years. And this is kind of the big trajectory upwards. This is the start of it for what the HC have got planned with regards to prosecutions and getting people in line with asbestos management. And yeah, you could call it fickle and say, well, look, it's not really being done for the looking after and the health and safety and well-being of people. It's just for the money, because as a country, we need to claw the money back from COVID somewhere, and this is just an avenue for it. You could say that, right? And yeah, that's a fair comment. And as a money-making regime, and it's a government money-making regime, there'd be fools not to do that, because the money's got to come from somewhere. But rightly so, and equally, it is going to improve things, but I think for businesses that ignore it, it's going to get a hell of a lot worse before it gets better. So I would urge you, if you've got any doubts whatsoever on, are you on top of your asbestos? Is it all being dealt with properly? Have you got any concerns whatsoever? You kind of need to take stock, have that review now, so that you don't end up in the same situation, having court costs, fines, massive, massive untold reputational damage, which essentially is going to affect your bottom line and your business going forwards. Yeah, it just needs a review. Look, the long and short of it, if you need help and assistance, we're here for you. That's what we do. And I'll gladly have a conversation for free with anybody and do a review and a bit of an audit, and kind of hopefully help steer you, get on the straight and narrow path, so you don't end up in that situation. Remember, asbestos first, not last.